All right, our Big East team previews continue here at MusketeerReport.com. And today, DePaul is up. We're with Joey Pollizze. Joey writes for our 24/7 site covering DePaul. And we're going to talk to him about this year's DePaul team. And Joey, first of all, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. I know it's a busy time of year.
Yeah, happy to be here. I'm happy for the season to start.
Yeah, it's a great time of year for all of us who cover the sport. And looking at this DePaul team last year, they were 3-29 overall, 0-20 in the Big East. They end up firing Tony Stubblefield. They hired Chris Holtmann, who had been fired by Ohio State, and he was tasked with putting together an entirely new roster of 10 transfers and 3 freshmen. So let's start here with all of that being said. Where are the fans at with all of this? Are they excited? Are they renewed? Are they ready to go for this new era of DePaul basketball? Or is like the fans left and said, wake us up when you start winning again?
Yeah, I think fans are excited about this year. You know, you brought it up. Whole new team, new coaching staff. Only one coach, Paris Parham, who was an assistant coach, remains with the team from last year's 3-win team. So whole new team. It's kind of like a refresh here for this DePaul basketball team. Fans are excited, and you know, we'll see what happens in year one with Chris Holtmann.
Is there anything that you can even target as a sort of goal for this team in terms of number of wins, or is it more about just seeing improvement and getting respectable via the eye test?
Yeah, I think it's just being competitive, you know, being competitive in the Big East. You know, last year it was 0 wins in the Big East. It was a rough year. It was a rough year for DePaul. It was a rough year for DePaul fans. Just being competitive and obviously seeing improvement along the way with Holtmann is going to be a huge test for this DePaul team this year.
And I know you've seen some of these guys. You know a little bit more about what he's brought in this offseason, but just looking at them, I like some of the pieces. I think this is definitely an improved team. But my first question about all of it, maybe a little bit more big picture, is who is going to be their best player this year? Do you have an eye on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of good players on this DePaul team. Looking at a good scorer, Jacob Meyer and Leighton Blocker, 2 players in the exhibition game on Monday against Illinois Wesleyan, both with 19 points. Both can score the basketball. Jacob Meyer is going to be your go-to scorer. He's going to be the guy who can get a bucket when DePaul needs. Whether he starts or comes off the bench remains to be seen, because in Monday's exhibition game, DePaul had some injuries, so we'll see how the lineup shakes out on Monday for the season opener. But Jacob Meyer and Leighton Blocker, 2 players that Big East fans should be familiar with heading into the season this year.
That's interesting that you went the Jacob Meyer route. He's actually from Covington, Kentucky. He went to a high school right here with actually my high school where I went to. So I'm very familiar with his game. I was a little surprised he wasn't recruited a little more heavily before he went to Coastal Carolina out of high school. But that's interesting that you think he might be capable of leading this team on the offensive end. You know, you mentioned some of Connor Enright, the Drake transfer, missed the Illinois Wesleyan game. He was out. Tell me what you think about him, because he's a guy that came on towards the end of the season last year for Drake, and he kind of almost reminds me of like one of those Villanova point guards, going back to like the Arcidiacono types, where it doesn't maybe look too intimidating or physically imposing, but man, he just makes the right play. He's a better athlete than you think. He can shoot the lights out from 3-point range. Are they expecting a lot out of this kid?
Yeah, he's a scrappy guard. He is going to be the leader of this team. You know, just talking with people at the DePaul Media Day, every player pointed to him as being the leader on the court, being the guy that's going to push others. He just makes the right basketball. His basketball IQ is off the charts. Coach Holtmann has nothing but positive things to say about him. He's going to be a player that's going to make an impact game in and game out. He maybe is not going to tear up the box score, scoring 20, 25 points a game, but he's going to make the right plays. He's going to be a scrappy guy. He's going to be a hard defender, and he makes the right basketball plays. DePaul's expecting a lot out of him and a lot of him on the defensive end as well.
You were mentioning some of the scorers there when I asked you about the best player. You mentioned Meyer. You mentioned Leighton Blocker, of course. Isaiah Rivera, another guy that can really shoot from the outside, that brings an interesting element on the offensive end. Out of the, like, if Meyer's going to be their leading scorer, out of those extra guys, Enright, Blocker, Rivera, do you see one that you personally are really expecting to emerge for this team?
I think Isaiah Rivera is going to be a scorer for this DePaul team. He struggled in the exhibition game, but Holtmann said after the game he's not worried about it, and he had double hip surgery this offseason. So maybe still getting the legs under him. He didn't have any summer workouts with the team, So at the start, maybe Rivera might struggle a little bit, but I think once we get into Big East play, I think Rivera's going to take off. He's going to be a good scorer for the team, a good three-point shooter for this DePaul team this year.
And then what are your thoughts on the front court? Because I see CJ Gunn as a guy that came over from Indiana, obviously a high major transfer, never really seemed to get his career on track at Indiana, at least the way they expected him to as a prospect coming in. And then David Skogman, a transfer from Davidson, is a unique big man. I mentioned in my write-up, I think if he was like a little more talented, I think he'd be at Creighton already, because he reminds me of some of the big, stiff shooting big men that they've had in the past there. He's a big-bodied guy. He's not very quick, but he's more of a skilled perimeter-oriented offensive player. What are your thoughts on the front court and how that's going to shape out?
Yeah, I think the way DePaul wants to work is they want to play through their big men. And we've seen this with Holtman and his scheme at Ohio State and Butler. He wants to play through the big men. And we saw that actually in the exhibition game. Skogman actually 14 points, 9 rebounds. He's going to be able to almost average a double-double a game. He's a big boy in the middle. And then you've got NJ Benson, the transfer from Missouri State. He didn't start in the exhibition game, but he's going to come off the bench. He's going to be that high-energy guy. He was top 5 in offensive rebounds in the Missouri Valley Conference last year, top 5 in blocks. He's going to be that big energy off the bench. But I think Skogman's going to be, a nice piece for the DePaul team. He can able to stretch the floor. He can play the 5. He can shoot some threes. He made a couple threes last year for Davidson. So I think they're going to play through Skogman and kind of see how things work in that offense. And then CJ Gunn will get his opportunities as well. Obviously, he's dealing with an injury right now. Questionable game of decision for Monday's game against Southern Indiana. But I think as the season goes on, we're going to see players like NJ Benson come off the bench and be a really big impact, because he brings a lot of physicality on the offensive and defensive end. And you're going to need that when you play teams like Creighton and UConn and Big East play.
Watching Skogman, offensively, I think he can be an impact piece. He's unique. He's really going to stretch the floor and pick and pop you, and he can score inside too. What about defensively? Are there concerns there with how he'll be able to maneuver against ball screens and guard out on the floor?
Yeah, there's a little bit. I won't say, it's going to be a weakness for him, but you would like to see him be more physical down low. It's going to be big for him in Big East play. That's why I think having NJ Benson is going to be big off the bench, because he is that little more physicality. He's got the physicality on the defensive, offensive end. You let these Skogman be a little more physical, but I think he can hang in there. He can hang in there, and he can score the basketball on offense. So I think there's a little bit of concern with that, but I think as the season goes on, I think he'll be fine, especially if he can play alongside Benson in Big East play.
Strengths, weaknesses. Is there a clear-cut strength for this team in your opinion?
I do think they have some scorers, and they have some good three-point shooters. We talked about Enright. Jacob Meyer went 4 for 6 in the exhibition game from 3. They have some scorers. They can shoot the ball. Isaiah Rivera, Connor Enright. Layden Blocker has the confidence now to shoot from the outside. Not much that we saw from him in Arkansas in that territory, but he has confidence to shoot the 3 ball. So I think they're going to be a team that's going to lead on the 3-point ball. I think they will be able to hang in there against some teams, because their 3-point will be able to keep them in games. Weakness, on the other hand, just all new players, man. It's going to be hard to gel together, especially at the beginning of the season. It's tough going into a new season with 13 new scholarship players. So that's going to be a big weakness for them. And you hope that, when they hit Big East play in January and February, that, they are more connected on the court. But right now, a big concern is going to be, just gelling on the court together.
I know you had mentioned that they were injured for that Illinois Wesleyan exhibition game, so we maybe didn't get a look at their true starting lineup in that one. My projected starting lineup in the write-up that I did went like this. I had Connor Enright at the point, Layden Blocker at the 2, Isaiah Rivera at the 3, CJ Gunn at the 4, and David Skogman at the 5. How would you adjust that?
Yeah, I think that's on par. I think Jacob Meyer, we talked about him being a scorer. He's going to come off the bench, I think. That's what happened in the secret scrimmage against Loyola Chicago. He came off the bench. I think Troy D'Amico is actually an interesting case. Troy D'Amico has been starting in the Loyola scrimmage, and he started in the exhibition game. So he could come in as the 4 for DePaul. But I think it's going to come down to, does DePaul want Connor Enright starting or turn off the bench being a high energy? I think there's a good chance he does start. So I do think your 5 prediction is on par with what DePaul might like from their starting 5 this upcoming season.
All right, Joey, I appreciate your time. We'll wrap it up with this. Do you think there's any chance of this DePaul team finishing above that 11th spot in the Big East this year?
I do. I really do. Just watching them in a couple of practices and watching them in the exhibition game, I do think they have the capability of finishing 9th or 10th. I really do. It's not going to be easy by any means, but I think they have a chance to finish above Butler or finish above Georgetown this upcoming season.
Awesome. I really appreciate your time. Everyone can find your work all season long at wearedepaul.com, correct? And best place to find you is on Twitter. Is that right?
Yes, Joey Pollizze.
All right, perfect. Joey, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick. Have a good one.